Hello and welcome to the Coming Conflict on Black Monday, March 13th, 2023. This is going to be an emergency broadcast video as things are really starting to get serious. So let's get right into it. As I'm sure by now you all know, we are in the middle or the beginning of the middle of the beginning of a banking collapse. So over this since Friday, Silicon Valley Bank has failed. We talked about that in the last video. Signature Bank has also failed. There are 30 banks that have been stopped trading, that have been halted because of volatility. Banks are down in the stock markets all over the place. We're going to go over what they did, meaning the Treasury, the Fed, and the White House did to bail these banks out. And let me just start by saying, yes, this is a bailout. Okay, in 2008, when they used the term bailout, what they did was they directly bailed out the owners and investors of the banks. This time is a little bit different, but don't let anybody lie to you. At the end of the day, the one watching this video, are going to be the one paying for it. Before I get into this, please, if you're watching me on YouTube, leave me a like, leave me a comment. Please subscribe, share this video. If you're watching me on Rumble, leave me a Rumble, leave me a comment. Subscribe, share this video. Follow me on any of the social medias. And if you are watching me on YouTube, please consider following me on Rumble. That's where I'd like to make my home primarily. So this is what happened, okay? You read this headline, Shift, Federal Reserve launches QE Extra Light to bail out banks. Okay, I'm going to read this for you. I'm going to give you a little bit of a summary of exactly how this is working and what the ramifications are going to be. The Bank Term Funding Program will offer loans of up to 1 year in length to banks, saving associations, credit unions, and other eligible depository institutions, pledging U.S. Treasuries, agency debt, and mortgage-backed securities and other qualifying assets as collateral. Banks will be able to borrow against their assets at par. Now, we're going to stop here for a second. I'm going to explain to you what at par means. At par means the full value of the collateral. So if it's a mortgage-backed security, if it's a $100,000 mortgage that over the course of 30 years is going to generate, we'll just use a number, we'll say an extra $20,000 in interest, that means the bank can give this mortgage-backed security to the Fed, and they're going to give them the full $120,000. So the base amount plus interest. The problem with this is all of these assets are underwater because of the higher interest rates that the Fed has induced to fight inflation. So that's what started this all to begin with, is because all of these banks' balance sheets have billions upon billions upon billions of dollars in unrealized losses. Last I looked this morning, it was something like $600 to $700 billion in unrealized losses across the regional bank sector. Okay, so that's that. On top of that, they're going to have 1 year to repay this money to the banks. On top of that, the Treasury is going to guarantee $25 billion in credit protection to the Fed. So if any of these banks default and aren't able to repay the money that they're borrowing against this collateral, you are directly on the hook from that. If it says coming from the Treasury, that's your tax dollars. Okay, there's that. Then on top of that, Peter Schiff brings up a great point. According to POTUS, the government bank bailout won't cost taxpayers any money. That's a lie. While it's true that no one's taxes will be raised to pay for it, the Fed will print lots of money to cover costs. That's inflation, and everyone will pay higher prices as a result. Yes, but he missed another crucial point. These banks are going to have, all of the banks, any bank, it doesn't matter the bank, they are now going to be required to pay fees to the FDIC. The FDIC is the arm, the federal branch that bails out banks, basically the insurance company for banks. They're now going to be required to pay extra fees to help come up with some of this money. So where do you think the banks are just going to take it on the chin? No, they're going to raise fees on you. They're going to raise, whatever it might be, overdraft fees, ATM fees. You are going to pay for it. It is the most direct of direct taxes, because it's going to be the bank saying, oh, well, we have to pay more money. Now you have to pay more money. So I just want to start with that. When you're going through this news cycle on your own, do not for a second think that you're not going to be paying for this. Okay. Now, small banks are crashing across the board. Why is that? Well, because the banking system is basically built on trust. I do not feel confident enough to go on about how the banking system actually works, but just to put it simply, when you deposit the money into a bank, they then take that money and invest with it. When a bank loans you money, they don't have the money that they're loaning it to you. Generally, they're supposed to have X amount percent in reserves, and then they can loan out the remainder. So if they give them $1, the bank has $1 in reserves, they can loan out $100, something like that. Now, the banks are failing. The small banks are failing. Why are they failing? And when I say they're failing, I mean their stock prices are dropping. So the investors in the banks, they're taking it right by the nose right now. And the reason is because President Potato Head got on TV this morning and said investors in the banks will not be protected. Biden said in a White House speech, they knowingly took a risk, and when the risk didn't pay off, the investors lose their money. That's how capitalism works. Well, while that is partially true, that's not how capitalism works, because capitalism doesn't have the government come in and start bailing out certain entities, interests, and sectors when things get bad. Capitalism works, bad ideas, bad investments get bad results. But because he made this comment, we of course see a run on bank stocks. Everybody who owns these stocks is dumping them, further complicating matters for these banks. This is live right now. This is CNN Business. They actually, I know you guys hate CNN, I'm sure, but they do a pretty good job with financial stuff. And these are the biggest losers right now in the market. And what do we have? Bank, First Republic Bank, Western Alliance Bank, Metropolitan Bank, Customer Bancorp, ICAD, First Foundation, this is a bank. Key Corp, this is a bank. PacWest Bancorp, that's a bank. Zion Bancorp, that's a bank. Security Matters Public Limited Company, I'm sure they're somehow connected to the banking sector. And look at these numbers. We're talking 65% down, 59% down, 40% down, 39, 30, 28, 27, 26, 26, 26. This is in one day. This is in one day. Now, as these banks start to fail, their shareholders start to bail on them, it's just going to put more pressure into this already complicated twisting and turning thing. This twisting and turning just mess that we're in. This is going to get worse. I am not trying to panic anybody. I'm just giving you the facts as I've come across them, trying to lay them out in a way that makes sense and come to a conclusion with you that maybe you can see my point of view and maybe think about things a little bit differently. Because I'm not saying I'm right about any of this. You saw the last video I did. I had a feeling that something like this was going to happen. I kind of alluded to it with how this whole system is working right now. Because basically, once these little banks fail, all right, they're going to take all of their government bonds, mortgage-backed securities, commercial mortgage-backed securities. That's important. I'm not going to get into that, but commercial mortgages right now are cratering. So the securities are worth nothing. They're going to take them all. They're going to give them to the Fed as collateral. They're going to borrow money as their bank gets run on by depositors. And it's also getting run on technically by its shareholders. The depositors are going to come and they're going to try to get all the cash out that they can. The bank will be insolvent. The shares are worth nothing, so they can't sell shares to raise money. Now, when time comes for them to pay back the Fed, they're not going to be able to pay back the Fed. They've gotten rid of all of their assets. So, oops. Now, the Fed owns the bank for all intents and purposes. They own all of their assets. And who's going to buy those assets? Well, it's either going to be the Fed holds them and they become the biggest, I guess, private owner of small banks. I mean, I don't even know how that would work. Or the big banks step in, they buy their assets up. Then the big banks go and they buy the other small regional banks for pennies on the dollar. Because that's what happened to the Silicon Valley Bank UK branch was HSBC came in and bought the entire bank for about $1 a share. So why is that important? Well, When you have the 4 or 5 biggest banks in the country, the JP Morgans, the Wells Fargos, the Chase, the Bank of America, TD Bank, I guess. I don't know all of them, but when you have the biggest banks in the country now owning all of the regional banks, so you've just consolidated all financials into a few multi-bajillion dollar companies. Now what happens? The Fed can then say, we can't have this happen. We can't have all this power in the hands of a few mega companies, and nationalize the banks. Then they nationalize the banks. Now the Fed is the bank, the central bank, just like the one lady she was being nominated for a Fed position. She didn't get it, thankfully. She was from Russia. Ted Cruz grilled her. This was last summer, I think. And she said specifically that the Federal Reserve should be the only bank in the country. Now, why that is dangerous is that is exactly how you wind up with a central bank digital currency, and you are tracked, you are traced, and you are treated like cattle, being told where you can go, what you can eat, when you can eat it, when you can go there. And that is the ultimate ending to this story, because like I just said, if the banks sell all of their, or borrow against all of their assets with the Fed, then the shareholders run on the banks, okay? The banks are worth nothing. They can't sell shares to raise capital. Everybody's taking their money out. They owe the Fed billions upon billions of dollars. So what's left? They have to go bankrupt. And now the Fed owns all their assets, and a big bank comes in and they buy up the carcasses of these little banks. This is exactly what's going to happen. And it's also really bizarre to me how nobody is questioning the fact that it started with Silicon Valley Bank, which I'm hearing has hundreds, if not thousands, of CCP adjacent companies or direct Chinese companies that mean CCP companies. It's weird, right? Because Biden's definitely not bought out by the Chinese Communist Party. That's a conspiracy theorist guy. That's a conspiracy theory, guys. But another thing to mention, too, is even the big boys aren't completely immune from this. We got Charles Schwab. Now, they're not a bank. I believe they're an investment bank, kind of like Lehman Brothers was. Like, you can't go and deposit money with Schwab. Again, I'm not 100% confident talking about some of this stuff, but I'm pretty sure they're like a Lehman Brothers. And even that, they're down 8%, okay? This is super serious. I cannot recommend you anything. But if it were me and I was using a regional bank, which I am, I would go and I would remove as much cash as possible and leave in there only what I needed to pay my bills. That would be what I would do. What you would do is what you do. But if you think that if these bank failures continue, that the FDIC is going to be able to bail them out, even if you have under the $250,000 and you're eligible for, and you're an insured depositor, the FDIC only has $125 billion in order to bail out banks. It cannot handle a systemic banking collapse. It cannot handle a bank run. And that's what we're seeing right now. So what are people doing with their money? Well, the big money is piling into treasuries, specifically 2-year treasuries, it looks like. The 2-year treasury yield is down. I think it's down over 100 basis points. So that's 1% in one day, overnight, down. That's the biggest drop since Lehman. Actually, I think it's the biggest drop since 1987, the stock market crash of 1987, which they called Black Monday. But the last I checked on Friday, it was down the biggest since Lehman. People are piling into gold right now, gold and silver. If you see in one day, yesterday we were at 1889. Today we're at about 1920. So that's a good $30 move. Silver is just booming. We're up almost $2. At one point today, we're up almost $2. This chart, I think, is a little out of date. Little out of date. But yeah, at one point we were up almost $2 in silver. Yeah, see 2210. You can see right here 2210. When I checked on Thursday, I was going to buy some more silver, and it was just $20. It was like $20.01. Now, on the backdrop of all this, we have some other very, very scary things. And I don't think there's any coincidence about this. Like Bannon says, there are no conspiracies, but there are no coincidences. What also happened on the 10th, this past Friday, the same day Silicon Valley Bank failed? And also, let me just make this real quick point. Silicon Valley Bank just didn't poof fail and no, it was a surprise to everybody. The Fed knew about, or the Treasury knew about this. The Fed knew about this. The FDIC knew about this, and they did nothing about it. They allowed Silicon Valley Bank to sell bad securities from Q4 of last year until the day it collapsed. Q4 of last year, it was already insolvent, and they were allowed to just continue on and do their thing, and nobody did anything about it because we have a bunch of woke diversity hires in the White House, and woke diversity hires at that bank too. So, get woke, go broke. But on Friday, what also happened was the House voted to declassify the COVID origins, lab leak intelligence. 100% of the House and Senate voted in the affirmative to release this. Well, that's really good, Tom, right? But there's a caveat. Intelligence officials would make public info around the Wuhan lab. They are going to release the intelligence, but only insofar as it is related to the Wuhan lab. We got a war, a de facto war between the US, NATO, and Russia right now. Not too long ago, you remember, we were talking about, if China supports Russia with military equipment, we're going to sanction them. So then all of a sudden we get this in tandem with the announcement of a banking collapse and the start of a bank run. Okay, and then what happens this morning? China Xi to hold talks with Zelensky after meeting with Putin. So now Xi is going to be putting himself in a position to be the cool head in the room and be the mediator. So that little garden gnome, neo-Nazi criminal Zelensky is sitting there sucking up on the U.S. and the EU and begging for money. This welfare queen, corrupt dictator over in Ukraine, and we pile hundreds and billions of dollars of your money, your children's money, your grandchildren's money, and your great-great-grandchildren's money who haven't even been born yet. We have been underwriting this thing from the beginning. And now he's going to go love up on Xi and the CCP. Well, what are friends for when you what do you need enemies for when you got friends like that, right? This is spiraling into something we are not going to be able to control. And I understand you're saying to me, Tom, these people don't want to control it. They want this to happen. Of course they do. But I always try to express this to people. Yes, there are shadowy groups and organizations and the Klaus Schwabs and the Soroses and the Biden White House, and they're pulling the strings and they're coordinating these things. But this is such a highly complicated system. Nobody knows the outcome of an action until the action is taken. We have no clue the ramifications of these banking failures, these bank runs on stocks, these bank runs on deposits. We have no clue how that's going to spread into the wider financial system. We have no clue what's going to happen when Xi goes to Russia and then goes to Zelensky. We have no earthly idea of the consequences, and we are being run by a bunch of woke, ideological diversity hires and neocon warmongering scumbags right now. There is no one out there that has the best interest of you at heart. You know why? Because they are bailing out Silicon Valley Bank. And yes, it's a bailout. They're giving these woke tech companies who hate your freaking guts. They hate you. They hate MAGA. They hate flyover country. You are nothing to them. They're going to bail out these companies. Some percentage of them linked to the CCP. and they're going to do it with your money, and they're going to spit in your face and lie to you and say, the taxpayer will not bear the responsibility of this bailout. The cojones on these people, the cojones. I urge you, if you are watching this video, get on the phone right now. Call your congressperson. Call your senator. Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. The Democrats actually should be all over this. And say, why are you not taking the bull by the horns and saying that this will not stand? We will not be responsible for bailing out woke venture capitalists, woke companies, these woke individuals that hate our guts. Because I was watching Bannon today, and he made an excellent point. Oh, but if the federal government doesn't do something, all of these hundreds of thousands of people who just work for these companies are going to lose their job, and the companies won't be able to make payroll. That's garbage. They can go to their venture capitalist buddies and they can extend a line of credit to make payroll. And the only reason they don't want to do that is because it dilutes their ownership in the company. If the company, this woke tech company A, goes to venture capital guru B, asks for money to make payroll, that venture capital guru now owns a bigger percentage of woke company A. They don't want to do that. This is all just another example of the little guy getting screwed. This is East Palestine all over again. They are spitting in your face. They don't care about you. They don't care about your family. They don't care about the money you have in the bank or how hard you had to work for it. Get on the phone, call your senator, call your representative, and let them know that if they do not get out in front of this, you will spend every waking minute of your life to make sure they do not get reelected. If they get enough of those phone calls, something's going to happen, because they can stop this. They can stop this. And then just in case you weren't freaked out enough by all this, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to cause any panic. The southern border down in Texas today, I think at Chihuahua, is literally being stormed by thousands of military-aged Venezuelans. They had to shut down the entire port of entry. No traffic, no commerce, no nothing. Nobody's talking about that, though. Whew, I'm getting worked up. I'm going to leave you with this, guys. If you made it through, you liked the video, like I said, please like, please share, please subscribe. Leave me some comments. I'd like to get the algorithm to pick this thing up. If you're on YouTube, like I said, follow me on Rumble. I'm going to leave you guys with this video of a orange man who might have predicted exactly what's happening.
Taxes not only on corporations, they'll just go to another country and they'll do just fine. But they're raising taxes on people and middle-income people, and they're losing jobs. So you can't allow that to happen. That will be all of this incredible job that we've done will go down like that. It will be a terrible, terrible sight. It might even be a 1929 situation, so you have a chance to have the greatest numbers in history. You're almost there. We're almost back to where we were from the standpoint of the stock market. Think of that. But you'll have a crash like you've never seen before. You put the wrong person in office, you'll see things that you would not have believed are possible. They want to raise taxes. They want to raise regulations. You know, a big part of what we've done is by cutting regulation. We've cut regulation more than any president in the history of our country, whether they're there for 4 years, 8 years, or in one case more than that. Nobody even came close. And we're doing much more. We have regulation, but it's proper regulation, not strangulation.